Sorry, a few seconds. All right. It's in the UK as well as our international partners and everybody who's joined us today. Welcome to our webinar, Performance Management. My name is Tanai, or Performance Management Pathway to Future Development. So my name is Tanai. I'm the in-house account manager here at the Civil Service College. I work with different clients, for example, Cabinet Office, Social Parliament, etc. But I thought it would be lovely for us to welcome everybody so that we can have a lovely session today with our webinar with Maria Holder. A little bit about my colleague, Maria. So Maria has She's got a pragmatic approach, blending real-life scenarios with the latest research, effectively nurtures leadership skills, and Maria guides individuals towards self-discovery and practical leadership, making learning a rewarding endeavor. So, Maria, over to you. But before I actually ask you to start, just a few housekeeping rules from our side. If we can everybody make sure the microphones are muted and we have our cameras off. In the meantime, if you have any questions during the webinar itself, please feel free to use our chat box. No. We'll be monitoring it from here. At any point, normally we'll probably wait until the end of the webinar to answer some of the questions, but sometimes it might be a case where the question is very important and it's relevant for what Maria is talking about. We'll make sure we pause Maria at that moment and ask the question or get that question answered for you. But I hope everybody is ready and let's get started. Maria, over to you.
Okay, well, very warm welcome to everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. And thanks very much for joining for this short webinar with us.
Maria, you're on mute.
I'm not.
No, we can hear her.
Yeah. So can you hear me now?
We can hear you before.
Yes, we can hear you before.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, everybody's up the hand. They're hearing me. Yes.
My name is Maria Older.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have son name, sir. Tendai.
Could you mute yourself, Tendai? Okay.
Now, can you hear everybody? Yes, good, right. Thank you, the gentleman there. Thanks so much for sum up. That helps, actually. Okay, so welcome for this short webinar, which is all about sharing some ideas about performance reviews. I'm sure all of you got tales to share about your good or bad experiences concerning performance management, the process, and actually concerning performance reviews. So today's session, what I would like to do is just highlight some of the key kind of changes and adjustment concerning performance reviews in today's world, the changed world of performance management. And these thoughts and ideas I would like to share is based on very much of my own experience working globally with managers and leaders, and also doing some research, academic sort of background to it as well. And the purpose of this all is I want you to reflect upon what you hear, looking at your own environment, your own issues, and decide whether you need some more assistance to make things work better. And obviously whet your appetite for some more learning, and a learning which the Civil Service College can offer you, focusing specific elements of this big topic of performance reviews. Next slide, please. Tendai, next slide.
No, we've just changed it, Maria. It's taking a little bit of a delay for it to swap over.
Okay. So we missed a little quote I wanted to share with you from Stephen Covey, which says that where you are going is more important than how fast you get there. And the idea really behind this, what I was thinking, then performance reviews is about what is the purpose? Does it carry it out to serve its purpose? So the manager and the employee both feel inspired, energized, makes sense what they're doing, okay? So the content of the webinar, as you see on your screen, I try to very quickly touch upon certain areas, looking at the changing working environment currently we have all around us, and how does it affect the way we view performance reviews and the whole performance management system as well. Obviously, also, I would like to look at some key elements which take
You're on mute, Maria.
what criteria to set to measure performance, setting goals and objectives, how you align individual and organizational goals. And then the biggest part is how that performance review conversation is happening, the actual dialogue, the style, the attitude of both parties on those reviews, the skills required to do it right, okay? And I want to just touch on the subject of culture, trust, biases, which are all very important elements to conduct effective performance reviews. Can we change the slide, please?
It's coming around. For some reason, she's being a bit slow on our side today.
Sorry, everyone, this is frustrating, I know. So what I wanted to talk about on the next slide coming up is looking at the background, the today's working environment. This is the post-pandemic world, and all of us affected different degree about it. And you probably hear this a lot, the VUCA world we live in. And I am not the first one who talks about it. The volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. And that has a reflection on all the things we do, managers, leaders, people in organizations. Because suddenly, the most important focus is your biggest asset in organizations, which are people. And what we talk about here is, we always used to say that anyway, but even more now, we need to understand where people are coming from, need to understand the people needs, their wants and their dreams, their desires, and respond to that. And this is an agile work, need to respond timely and appropriately. Now, performance management system introduced the organization to set the framework of what we do and how we do it. Within that sits performance review. And these performance reviews should serve, like I said that quote earlier, a purpose. The purpose is to inspire, energize people, to help them to develop, because this is basically all about preparing people for tomorrow. So can we move on, please? So just quickly wanted to show you, and don't dwell too much on it, what usually a performance management sort of process or system you see. And usually they have a kind of key stages of performance management, which is the planning, monitoring, reviewing, and kind of the reward at the end. What I really would like to concentrate now is that monitoring and the reviewing part of that performance management process. Hopefully the slide will catch up with me soon. So can we move it on a couple of actually the slides now? Apologize
Yes,
for this.
we do apologize. It's our technical
Yes,
issues
it's
with our
not very
internet
good.
here.
Okay, it just makes it very not smooth at all. So I said I want to concentrate on performance reviews. Now, you probably guessed at my age, I went through a lot of performance management reviews. I worked in corporates all over the world. I had my own experiences, okay? And looking at back the traditional, and the next one, please, the next slide. Looking at the traditional performance reviews, change is required. Today's world is different. So what's wrong with this traditional performance reviews? there's a few aspects needs to be changed. One is the frequency. You know, I remember when I started to do that, it was once a year and then every 6 months and then a quarterly reviews. And it was very sort of formal and formally way it happened. The frequency needs to be changed. Why? Because this is an agile, fast-moving world. Thank you. Agile, fast-moving world. So we cannot wait sometimes to give appropriate review and feedback if we wait long enough. People pulled up on very short-term projects. So you want to give the feedback and the reviews as it's happening, straight after the event happened, not to wait until 3 months or 6 months. So frequencies have to change. Okay. The focus of these reviews have to change as well. Why? If you recall, all of you probably the experiences, performance reviews was about looking at how you done against your set targets and goals the last 3, 6 months or a year. So always look backwards, looking at past performance. Very little time spent on looking at the future, looking at the individual development journey more. And this is the focus have to happen here, is becoming more and more development focused, looking at what's happening now and how we prepare our people for the future. Okay, welcome Jamaica. I just noticed you coming in. The third area I would like to mention to you is traditional performance reviews, the source of intelligence. You recall it has to be evidence-based. So when we sat down to do performance reviews, it was between a manager and the individual, what the manager thought, what the individual had to say about it. Nowadays, we can reach out and get feedback from various internal and external sources, doing 180 or 360-degree feedback. This is all happening now. But the beauty of this, that a lot of people have a chance to actually comment on individuals' performance and provide intelligence about their performance. Very, very important. It cuts out more the subjectivity, but sometimes manager unfortunately displayed on some of these performance reviews. The assessment process has to be much more objective, okay? And of course, some of you may recall that when it came to performance reviews, a lot of managers hated the idea and the individual didn't like it either for a lot of reasons. It was time consuming, it was a paper-driven exercise. Then of course it became more digital. Even I went through that sort of transformation. But it's seen by the manager an extra task, and by individuals that wouldn't see that roadmap. They couldn't see why this is happening. Not everyone, but a lot of bad performance reviews have been conducted. So all these areas needed to change. Can you move on now, please? So what we were talking about here is that it's very important to prepare people for the future development. And performance reviews are providing a good forum to do that, okay? Because this agile world we're living in, the regular check-in with individuals, so the frequency of feedback, the frequency of reviews have to be appropriate and right, but happening much more often than it used to be. And do remember, these check-ins don't have to be very long. Could be 10 minutes, could be half an hour, could be 2 hours, as it's appropriate. The priority, rather than just look at how an individual did against the set goals and objectives, the focus now shifting, a lot of time spent on where we go from here, what's happening now, and how we can help the personal and career development, okay? And the whole process must not be seen as so bureaucratic and time-consuming. So managers need to see they have their own measurement put in how they do these performance reviews. So they checked, they've been monitored how they do that, and so is the individuals, okay? So what you see here is that generally performance reviews are evolving, moving towards a more frequent, development-focused reviews. Can you move on, please? So now, how these new evolving performance reviews fit into organizational strategies? Where do we place them? So just a few ideas I need to share with you on that. Can we move on, please? So first of all is an interesting statistic I was reading. 69% of employees were saying they would perform better if they would have a performance review which fit in what actually the priorities of the organization. And they see that managers actually appreciate the effort put in. So I just picked up 3 very interesting areas. So these performance reviews being part of organizational strategies, they need to follow the changing priorities of the work, okay? And it's 3 areas I picked up here. This VUCA, this agile work, okay? We need to make sure we look after our talents. And we talked about talent management many, many times. You know, a few years ago was one of the key subjects everybody talked about, how we manage our talent pool. From my point of view, what I try to say here is that because we have more frequent reviews, you spot potentials very quickly and you can work on that. You can develop your talents. So that's one thing very important. Secondly, this VUCA world we talked about, again, I talked about fast change is happening and the need for change is obvious. So innovation plays a big part in organization, and the competitiveness very much measured which organization become more innovative, okay? So in that process, setting goals and targets and objectives for individuals become much more short term because the changing needs of that, okay? So the frequency, this is why these reviews have to sit in, you know, very much of regular basis. And thirdly, and something, it's my own personal hobby horse, maybe you call it, you know, following the pandemic, our work ethics changed. We've been isolated for a long time. Then some of us went back to work, to the workplace. A lot of people still carry on working from home. My God, this is a nightmare for managers, isn't it just? Actually observing, looking at people's effort to put in, very difficult to do. So what you look at more, the output much more, and you don't necessarily see the efforts, but we have to make an effort to see the efforts of people. And that comes to me that in this complex world, individuals cannot be successful on their own. They need to be part of a team. So that collaborative approach needs to be promoted. Performance reviews need to focus on the teamwork element, a requirement of working in teams. It's actually measured and actually discussed on these performance reviews. This is a knowledge economy now. We've got so much around us. Nobody can be successful on their own. They need to work in team. And unfortunately, this team spirit suffered the most after the pandemic. I personally terribly miss that. And look at now what we're doing. We're doing a lot of virtual training. And as I say, it's got the advantages and the disadvantages of that. When we talk about performance reviews, just think if you are a manager or the hardship you have often to remain objective, fair to everyone. It's not an easy thing to do. Next slide, please. So when you sit down for the performance reviews, there's a few elements I would like to touch on before actually looking at the conversation, the dialogue, okay? And the first element, can we move on, please, is about how we measuring performance, okay? And it's not so much that we measure it or not. We always done it and we will do. But what are the criterias? And it's a slight little sort of change we detect here. So measuring, what is the criteria we set to measure performance? It's depend on the type of performance you want to measure, okay? And we all know when we're measuring performance, it's focusing either on the result, which is the output, or how this output delivered is the behavior. I think it should focus on both. But there are sometimes very specific jobs where one play more part than the other, okay? Now, the change in this changing world, what I notice is that you really need to be very clear what kind of performance you measure. And I brought up, or you see it on your slide, 3 sort of type of area. There are a lot of jobs when you do measure the individual performance in that job, it's purely task orientated, very much focused on what is a job description said, how you done against that in terms of quality, time, cost, and quality and all that. So basically the core element of that job, okay? And we measure it on that. However, there are some sectors and jobs that's just not enough. And the next one, I put the contextual performance. In other words, organizational citizenship behavior. These are this performance measurement focuses on the extra mile bit, what people do, on beyond from the core role, what else they do. The voluntary sector, very good example for that. But if you just imagine, an example is that looking at individuals, their performance, how much they help maybe another business unit to perform better in the organization. Certain other groups of people benefited from their work. So we're looking at stepping out from the core activity, reaching out much bigger area and making a difference that way. Then, of course, the third one, adaptive performance. This is very much now looking at today's world, the agile world. So here the focus when we measure performance much more looking at how you respond to change in your role and how you support all the initiatives, the innovation in the organization. And depending on the job role, just bear it in mind, need to decide the focus, okay, what you are measuring on. And it is, as I said, very different. And the tendency at the moment going very much looking at contextual and adaptive performances, which is very, very important for the future. So then we have tools, isn't it, to measure this performance. And you, ladies and gentlemen, very much aware of these tools. Can we move on, please? I just listed a few for you here. Will come up in it. Okay, so the first one I think I put up there on the slide will be key performance indicators. Very familiar for everyone, KPIs or whatever you call it. I myself had a lot of experience with that. Nothing wrong with them. As a measurement tool, it works very well, okay? A lot of it is on a digital platform now in organization. And yes, it's one way to measure performance, okay? Balanced business scorecard, you heard about that. That's more a higher level in organization set, okay? What I would like to draw your attention is the next three. Personnel development plan needs to take much more part in the performance review and as a measuring tool as well. This I remember always, it's always the last bit, what like 10 minutes left, we talked about that if we did. Now it should be an integral part of performance reviews, where we go from here, okay? I run a lot of leadership and management training programs all over the world. And I always make sure that at the end, there's a personnel development plan started to be formed by individuals before they leave the classroom. Before very high level I train, I call them manifest, but doesn't matter what you call it. It's a personnel plan where I go from here. Should be taken a big part on these performance reviews. That inspires people, that energizes people. Also, I mentioned to you about the sources already. So when we do this feedback and reviews, the 360, 180-degree feedbacks, it is a measurement tool. I told you, it increases objectivity of where we do the performance, is more rounded, more diverse. So it's very important part of the performance reviews and as a tool of measurement of that. And last not least, self-evaluation. You know, my ethos is I'm a leadership trainer, and I believe that leadership development starts with, I know who am I, self-awareness. And I think that's applicable for everyone. Until you are very clear about yourself, how you can do other things, how you can initiate and make changes and make things happen. So when we talk about performance reviews, I would say it's very, very important for the individuals, the employee, very much aware who they are when they go forward and when they're having those reviews and when we're chatting to their managers or involving with them. So increasing their self-awareness every way. Just remember, if you have quite a frequent check-in and feedback with individuals, that self-evaluation works itself. It works very well. Please believe me, got a massive impact. People, motivation, people responses to things because they are aware who they are and where they're coming from. So spend a lot of time on that as part of the performance review. Can we move on, please? The next one, so this was criteria for measurement and tools for measurement. Somebody asking, I'm just going to stop for a second here, okay? There's a slide before this, by the way. Yeah, let me just stay here for a second. Somebody asked about this 360 and 180 feedback. It's basically, if you recall, when you get feedback from, you're working on some projects, or maybe for 2 months, you're working for a different manager on project or whatever. So you want feedback, and the feedback source could be not just above you or below you, but peer groups from side of you, okay? And look, usually these are anonymous. So usually they're pretty good. They're very confidential. Usually we keep it confidential. And that's good. As I say, it encourages objectivity. And 180 is asking if you just look above or below the people you work with. So the 360 is a full circle. So for every angle in terms of hierarchy, you get feedback or comment about your performance. And that's very, very important. Certain cultures very difficult to implement, still quite a resistance to it. From experience, I can tell you that now. But I think that is the future, really, that getting more and more people involved. And from my personal experience, when it happened to me, I really appreciated that. And I started to work some odd projects and we get the feedback. And also when they looked at the colleague feedback as well as people not just below me or people reporting to me, but well above me as well. So I hope I answered the question here about this. But it's a very positive tool to use to measure performance. Now, when you part of the performance review is setting goals and objectives. Now, what's new here? You all know about this. The SMART objectives, we all learned, the first thing we learn, I think, on training courses. Nothing wrong with that. Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timely. Yeah. However, not just being smart is something else we need to think about it. So when you're setting your goals and objectives for individuals, think about the individual's own development need, the level they are in. I'll put it here. It needs to have an element in our objectives which concerns about improvement or development. So almost like putting in objectives which are learning outcomes for the individual, actually performing or fulfilling that particular goal. And more, we need to focus these objectives on a behavior element of not just the result, as I mentioned to you before, but a lot of focus on actually the hows, the behaviors of individuals, okay? And I must tell you, that is a much harder things to do, of course, in practice. Apart from setting these, of course, if you recall, traditionally, and it's nothing wrong with that, we said the way you should work in organization that you set the goals right at the top level, executive level, the CEO or a board, and it was cascading it down, right down to department and the regions and then line manager and the individual. Yeah. However, what you need to bear in mind now, looking forward and moving forward, is that that's just not enough. You need to sing, inverted comma, those objectives. What does that mean? You need to align individual objectives to the overall organizational objectives. So, give an example. Let's say one of the goal of the organization increase their market share or whatever. So that goal means a different things to a CEO, the senior manager, the department head, or actually the data encoder on the shop floor or whatever it is. Same sort of goal, but what is their part in it? How they can contribute to it. We need to show it much more. Often we haven't spent enough time, make it very clear how individuals' objectives fit into the overall picture. It has to, okay? And the difference perhaps slightly now is that we're not straight away looking at the top. We're actually spending quite a lot of time how that individual alignment fits in to the overall objectives. Much more focused on that nowadays, okay? We much more actually talk about it and analyze it through the discussion with the individual, okay? So all the things good was there, we keep, but we just slight adjustment around it to make it more effective in today's world. Can I have a next slide, please? So we talked about measurement criteria, we talked about the tools of measurement, goal setting. The next one is about the competencies, just quickly mention to you a few ideas around that. We know competencies, skills and knowledge. Now, competency framework. I work for organization where I actually was part of a project team put together the organization's competency framework. It's a very rewarding work, and I learned a lot about it. On the screen, I'll just give you an example of the public health leadership competence framework as an example. There's many sort of different versions available. They're important to have because they define the shared expectation of the organization. However, most important, again, the slide changes now, is that in this competency framework, just like you align individual goals to the overall goals, competencies need to have flexibility, okay? And these competencies are not just technical, but behavioral as well, okay? And the framework is almost like a dictionary. An organization set up the competency framework, identify 10 or 15, and each got certain levels. Why? Because the flexibility aspect of it. These competencies need to work for everyone in the organization, which means you can't just like a one-size shoe to present it. It needs to fit for individuals, okay? So when you have a definition of what, for instance, a competency called assertive behavior with client or whatever it is, what does that mean? Every level of the organization, and the definition has to be very different. I think most of you probably know this, okay, because I have seen examples and people work with that, but I cannot emphasize enough flexibility, very important now. Otherwise, you have a defined competency framework and all you're looking for creating clones in the organization. Everybody, you know, the same, people not the same. The whole idea today, what I try to talk to is that individuals are on different development level, and performance reviews need to address that and work with that in every part. Can we move on, please? So now finally, we got to this wonderful conversation element of performance reviews. Forgive me, I'm going a bit fast probably by the timing. And this is the most important part, and a part I get involved a lot with clients, the actual meaningful conversations, the dialogue. Can we move on, please? Okay, and the next one, please. So just let me just highlight to you the areas important to look at. And these areas, each of them a big topic. Okay, and as I say, I hope I whet your appetite to hear more about it on particular training courses or webinars. So very first one is, when it comes up, is, I think it's a star. I wasn't sure what I done now. What did I do? Yes, is a style of conversation, okay? So let's wait, it come up in a minute. The style of conversation, if you recall, when you sit down to the performance reviews, the structure is the development needs, the needs approach. So you had these goals. What are the issues with that? How did you manage to get over the problem? And you're looking at that at the moment, okay? The style of conversation now, we call it a strengths-based approach. If any of you listening and is a coach yourself, or you did coaching as well, this is actually based on that well-known coaching model called appreciative inquiry. And I'm a coach, so I work a lot on that. And a beautiful part of this, and I really mean that, is that you have a conversation with individual which start on what you done well, where are your strengths are, what you're good at. I cannot tell you the motivational value of that, okay? So you start with that and you build on that. Obviously, to get even better, there's some issues there. So you do tackle the problems, but the approach is very, very different, okay? It's very much looking at, so what are the other opportunities we could discuss to even more strengthen your growth, okay? And that, what happens is changes people's behavior because they're responding to that, okay? And that behavior reflects through the way you value things around you, your mindset changing, and also generally you learn about yourself, who you are, and this got a much more long-term impact on the individual and in the organization. So it's the approach. The discussion, the framework, a lot of similarity, but the approach is very different. It starts from what you're good at and how we can even strengthen that more. Can you please move on? The next one is the skills. The skills of the manager to conduct these dialogues, and also some aspect about the individual responses. I mean, that one affect the others. And you see on the screen, it comes up in a minute, there's quite a list I put together. What are the skills important to deliver this meaningful conversation, the dialogues, this regular check-in when it's required? So you see quite a list, again, self-explanatory. May I just point out a couple of areas which I believe very important. Listening. Ladies and gentlemen, we all think we are very good at. We got 2 of that and we don't use it enough. Listening is one of the most important skills to develop to be good, to conduct good performance reviews. And if you are a good listener, you ask the right questions as well. So the 2 sort of sits together very well. So that is quite a almost obvious part of the skill development, and people think, oh, nothing to it. Actually, it's quite difficult, and I work a lot around that, developing people's skills around that. However, I wanted to draw your attention to build resilience and confidence. Resilience, post-COVID world resilience. A lot of people are suffering mental, physical, emotional kind of lack of resilience, and there's a lot of work going around to build people resilience. But good performance reviews does that job very well, building people resilience, and it's an important part we need to really pay attention to. And confidence. Most of the time I say to the client I work with, you got the answer, you got the solution. What you don't have is the confidence. So managers need to encourage people using that skill of building their confidence. Very, very important to do, okay? And I think the hobby horse I told you before, self-awareness, definitely. Self-awareness on part of the manager to be objective, having the right style, and of course, the individual as well on those conversations. Very much understand who we are, where they want to be, what is their purpose, or the manager have to help them to actually clarify that. Can we move on? A couple of slides, I believe. And then we're coming to the mentioning, I said to just quickly mention to you about, and the next one, please, biases. You know, the world we're living in now, it's a very complex world. And I think you all agree to that. Doesn't matter what country you are in. And these unconscious biases are playing a big part in the way we view our life. Now, when we talk about performance reviews, be careful, okay? Be careful the language you're using, your mindset, your approach, so you don't actually demonstrate any of these biases, okay? I mean, just an example, how quickly we stereotype people, how easy your language could reflect your prejudices. And in each country got their own biases. I work in Africa quite a lot and Asia. They've got their own set of biases. And here in the UK, we have it as well. When I came to this country, I'm Hungarian. When first time I came 40 odd years ago, this is one of the areas I was very much involved and learned a lot about it and experienced it. So I'm very much aware of that. Now, okay, I can see something. Oh, the sandwich approach, or somebody brought it up. Absolutely. I think you talk about this motivational sandwich when you do performance reviews. Absolutely start with a good, middle fill in the area of concern, and then finish on a positive. It's slightly different when I say the strengths approach, because what we're talking about here is very much not just the good and the bad, but what is your defining strengths, and really work on that. But it's a sort of similar line on approach as I think Penelope was saying that. So back to biases, I don't dwell too much because it's very, very specific to organizations or cultures, but important to bear that in mind. Please move on. Also, trust. I work a lot on trust. This is one of the most difficult element of actually for a trainer to establish and then maintain. And I've got some mathematical formula up there for you. As I say, I work around that. But my point to you is that most of the inadequacies, problems, the lack of accountability and happening in organization and an individual level is that the absence of trust. That needs to be built and needs to be maintained, which is a hard task. But don't ignore it, because that's the foundation of everything else. You build on that. I always say, if you have trust, everything else will happen in the organization and much, much easier. So sometimes back to basics, and managers need to really establish trustworthiness. Performance reviews only work if both parties are authentic, with high integrity. They actually are conversing there. So again, don't have time, but big subject matter, how to build it, to maintain it. And the next one, please. Culture, I believe I mentioned just very quickly. It's culture. Well, what is culture? It's we creating the culture. What we do is a set of behaviors, set of attitude and shared values. Now, importance of culture. Nations got their own culture, organization, sectors got their, industries got their own culture. When you are doing performance reviews, don't ignore it. Need to take note of it. You will anyway, because certain things you can't easily to do, or you can do easily. So there's some examples I brought up there, but basically my message to you is that analyze, understand the culture you work in, and then just believe in that you can influence that as a manager and the individual you're working with you on a performance review. That because that culture will evolve around that. So a lot of organization has to move on and do different things, but you need to, a lot of the problem is that they do not recognize the starting point. So you need to be aware where you are culturally. Is it a learning organization? Is it an organization appreciates supporting people personal development plan? It is the organization where managers actually measured how they're performing their managerial duties and responsibilities. So all sorts of things like that. How honest you can be with people. You know, I worked in India at the caste system. Very different approaches you take when you are doing performance reviews, just an example. So another big element, you know, we could talk a lot about is the culture. And why do I say it in this world? Because we travel so much now. We reach out so easy through social media to other cultures. So you need to be aware of that and take that into the account when you are setting up your right approach to performance reviews. Well, finally, can I just have a summary slide, I think, coming up here? I know I went through very fast and apologize to everyone. These are big subject, but I just wanted to whet your appetite to see that there are some changes in this arena, and these changes you need to be aware to be successful. So we will have a slide in a minute. And it's one of the key points about this that, as I said, the frequency we get together, we have those very important one-to-one conversations. It has to be much more frequent and appropriately to do that. There was a saying around feedback is a breakfast of champions. So it is important that we do that well. Right, hopefully the slide moving on in a minute. Okay, the quote here put you Peter Drucker. Some of you may be familiar, Drucker Society. A manager task is to make the strengths of people effective and their weakness irrelevant. And that applies fully as much to the manager's boss as it applies to the manager's subordinates. Can you please move on? So what I'm saying is, of course, the weakness is not irrelevant, but the focus is very much on, you see, the strengths and the goodness and the future growth very much on these performance reviews. So eventually we got the final slide. I believe I wanted to say that, so frequency, very important how you do that. And when you get this conversation, you know, you cover the challenges, but also cover the opportunities for the individual for development to go on and move into the future. So the actual conversation of performance review, almost like a coaching conversation. And if I can leave you with that thought, it's very important. That's the way you should approach it. So all the skills and attitude and style are listed there. It's all actually effective doing a good coaching session. And that's the approach managers should take. Very strongly recommended this time. Because after all, and I would like this slide to come up soon, that all us managers here, it's your duty, or what you do now is you are actually preparing today's people to be people of tomorrow. And that's very, very important. It's a fast changing environment. You can't stop. You need to do that. Prepare today's people for the people of tomorrow. We all developing our future leaders. I believe that very, very strongly. Well, this has come to an end now in the webinar. I hope I made you reflect a little bit on your own knowledge and on your experiences, what you heard here. And please, if you've got any questions, I'm happy to sort of address before we move on. But as I said to you, is each of these topics is big. And as I say, the opportunity is there from a civil service college to help you and build that knowledge even more and assist you to be effective in this today difficult working environment.
I'm here, Maria. Thank you. Thank you very much for the patience, everybody. Is there any questions for Maria at this point? We're happy to take some questions from you.
Oh, lovely. Thank you, everybody clapping. They're very nice.
We have to say, though, I've seen a few questions regarding slides and what we can do with those. First of all, on behalf of CSU, we apologize for the Teams. It's been a very interesting experience with Teams today, so we do apologize for that. However, we will be sharing the recording on our YouTube channel, as well as most of the attendees who attended today. You'll receive it as an email. Now, just a few things from CSC. I don't know how many of you are aware of what we do. As a college itself, we also offer tailored programs, which means that we understand your organizational needs, as well as deliver tailored designed or programs based off a learning needs analysis that we conduct with you. So if it's something that you think it's something that you'd be interested in doing, we will be sharing my colleagues' names, both for in-house and open course coordinators, but we also have other courses that will complement what Maria was just talking about regarding performance management. So, for example, emotional intelligence, honest conversations, or having difficult conversations, which is usually brought to life via forum theater techniques or practical way of allowing participants to develop understanding skills. You also have managing performance and motivation. You also have team performance, direct insight into which attitudes, mindsets, and behaviors support effective team operation, as well as coaching and mentoring skills for leaders, which allows you to design and implement strategies to leverage coaching and mentoring in interaction and leadership practices. So what we'll do, we'll also, like I said, we'll be sharing the webinar on our YouTube channel, but most of everybody who's been on the call today will also receive it as an email. We'll probably ask you to share some feedback. And like I said, we'll rather you're as honest as possible with us. We do understand that we have some technical issues, but if it's something that you'd be interested in hearing more or further about, please, like we said, tell us your feedback, then we can get Maria to probably do another webinar like this as well. So my colleagues to reach out to you if you're thinking of doing any of our courses, either in-house or open course. We start off with Sweta. She's our learning coordinator for open courses, and Deborah for in-house learning coordination. She's our in-house learning coordinator. So pretty much most of our in-house programs, they'll be able to support you with all the courses that I mentioned that will support the webinar that we've just mentioned as well. But be classes, especially for international participants, pairs spread over a week, as it will be difficult to travel for a one-day course. That's a very, very, very valid point, Penelope. So what we tend to do, if you do it as an open course, for example, we offer virtual options. So it's not just in-person options we offer, we also offer the virtual and in-person options as well. Now, what I'll probably ask you to do, if it's possible, if you can take your phone out and just scan our QR code, it will take you to our website, which will allow you to look at other offer. Wow.
Can I just say something? Can they, if somebody was just, I picked up, I hope the person's still online about trust, because obviously
Sure.
it's a big subject. And, you know, I know what it's like. What the hell you mean, Maria? How you can build and all that. As I say, I do work face-to-face programs on that one. I just mentioned a few things about it. So how you can build it is, you know, things like using positive language, communicate your limitation, to say, I don't have the answer for everything, but I'll find out. You know, often, and especially the culture I work in, is very difficult to admit that I don't have the answer for everything. Don't overpromise. Keep your promises. And because back to this three-dimensional kind of leadership behavior, the head, the heart, the leg. You know, so the credibility, what you say, the emotions is support what you say, and then make things happen, the leg. So all these elements, you know, we have exercises and case studies around it, and so many elements of the which build trust, which keep forgetting people and don't think about it, but it's basically behaving authentically. You know, you think, what you do, what you say, what you feel is all what you are, and people see that. And a lot of managers can't do that easy, you know, because you still got that very mentality, some people, that knowledge is power, and, you know, I can't show that I am lacking something. No, you are a human being. We're all lacking things, you know. It's being open about it and learning about it. So just to quickly mention that, I think was Penelope or somebody else was mentioning that. So it's a very interesting subject. So thank you asking that. Yeah.
I know that we've had a few comments from Kerry as well. Just thinking of the session, as well as Josephine. And like I said, if we can, on the website, like I said, we've got a QR code. It will take you to our website, but it will also tell you about our exciting upcoming new webinars and in conversations. So I think it's going to be a very, very exciting period in terms of our webinars as well as in conversations. And I can guarantee you, we probably won't have the same problems we face today with Teams. As you know, Teams is a bit temperamental. However, I'm conscious that everybody's probably got things to do. But if you have any questions for us, we're happy to pick them up, like we said. But at the same time, you'll be receiving the recording. Thank you once again for logging on. For everybody who's based in the UK, our international colleagues as well as clients, thank you very much for joining. I hope everybody enjoys the rest of the day. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you.